Hey guys, welcome back to the 527 Alpha Kilo video build log, which I kind of guess this technically makes it a vlog. I don't like that term, but I suppose that's what this is. If you watched the previous video, you saw Shane and I working on trimming up these ribs to actually fit into the stabilizer spars. And so I'm still doing that. We didn't get it done in the time that we had that evening, so I'm still working on it. Lots of trimming, clipping, and the worst part, grinding away with a file. Filing away with a file, which makes a terrible noise, but it's got to be done. And pretty soon, these will all supposedly fit into the spars, and we'll get to some drilling, but really the toughest part is just finessing these ribs so that they fit. I sped all this filing and trimming up to about 3,000 times the normal speed because you guys have seen this before. So let's get on to something a little bit different, which is going to be drilling, which I guess isn't all that different, but it's something new-ish. So here we are, getting the spar ready to put the ribs on, which is going to be an interesting event. So I got to get the spar vertical, in that position. So we got to use lots of clamps, and you'll see eventually I get a bit creative with the clamps to make sure that it stays flat against the workbench so that we end up with a flat spar. We don't end up with a bend or a twist in it. So, because you want all the reason being, you want all the ribs, the bottom of the ribs, to be laying flat on the same surface that the spar is laying on and the same surface that all the other ribs are laying on. So if your spar isn't flat against the workbenches, then you're going to have one spot. If you set the ribs to all be laying against the workbench, you're going to have a rib that's way down compared to a rib that's way up where the spar is touching the workbench. And so you get the spar to touch the workbench so that all the ribs touch the workbench, so that all the ribs are in the same position in reference to the workbench, so that they're all going to create a flat surface on the outside of the rib. If that makes sense. I felt like a lot of rambling. I hope it made sense. So just a quick shout out. You might have seen it when I was drilling the holes for that rib that is on there. First off, point out real quick, some of the ribs didn't get trimmed quite enough to fit, so what I'm doing over there is filing away to make sure that rib fits and making sure that there's no starts for a crack there. I want to make sure that those ribs are as healthy as possible. But anyways, quick shout out, you might have seen it, and you'll see it coming up here again in this video and in all the future videos. I have a new shiny, because it's not shiny technically, but a yellow corded DeWalt drill, which is awesome compared to the little Black & Decker drill that I had been using. My grandparents were awesome and bought that for me so that this process would be a little bit smoother, and so I'd have a little more professional tools to work with. So huge thanks to my grandparents for doing that, and they did it because my parents taught them how to watch YouTube, so they might be watching this video now. So thank you, grandparents. This is an awesome drill. So there are a couple rivets that I did not set on the doublers for the spar, not because the instructions told me not to do it. I was going rogue and doing my own thing. They looked like they lined up with where the ribs sat, and I didn't want to drive those rivets and then find out later that I needed to put a rivet in there that would go through the spar, the doubler, and the rib. So I wanted to leave those holes open, and I just put Clecos in them so that they were available if I needed to, cleco or to rivet one of the ribs in that position. And as I started working with the ribs, I quickly realized that that was a stupid notion because there's cutouts in the ribs that go around the doublers, the cutouts that ended up not being big enough, and I had to largen so that they could go around the doublers and fit the spars properly. But you saw me when I first started this little voiceover. I had my little handheld riveter out so I could drive those last 4 rivets, and now I'm back onto drilling and getting the ribs set into the right places. Well, another transition, another pair of clothes, another day. This kind of goes to show you how much time, I wouldn't say time, how many days, how broken up some of this work ends up being. I mean, this 12-minute video ended up being filmed over 4 or 5 days just because I get an hour to work here, I get 2 hours to work there, I get half an hour here, and I tried to spend as much of it as I could in the garage. And you can see here some of my different techniques for clamping. Because I had to clamp in different places, I had to clamp inside of this bar, so you can see that I used a couple pieces of wood so I could get one wood on that bottom flange of this bar, one piece of wood on the bottom flange of that spar, and then one piece of wood standing up vertically so that I could clamp that and put the pressure onto that bottom flange and hold it in the right place. Because if I put the pressure onto the top flange with the clamp, then it would end up tilting my spar and it wouldn't be vertical 90 degrees like I want it to be. So I had to get a little creative and get the job done. So all the ribs are drilled and clecoed in now, but I noticed that the top flange of this spar still wasn't sitting at the right angle in some places, so I ended up getting a different tool. Instead of just hitting it with a hammer, I've got this tool that's basically a vice grip with some really flat pieces on the ends, on the jaw. It's made for bending, like flashing for roofing and that kind of stuff, so bending aluminum, and it worked just fine. I used, you can see the blue, I used some shop towels to clamp in between the jaws and the metal just to keep from damaging the spar as best as I could, and then cranked on that to bend the top flange to the position that I wanted it to be, to the angle that I wanted it to be in. And I go down and do that for most of this spar because it was still a little off for most of it. So that is drilling, finessing, and getting those stabilizer ribs pretty well set. So now for the two jobs that never seem to be finished in a builder garage: cleaning up and deburring. So cleaning up all the shavings, obviously vacuuming, getting my garage somewhat clean so I can keep working in it instead of waiting in a pile of aluminum shavings. And then on to deburring the spar and the ribs so that they're ready to be riveted together. So that, I mean, the hopes at the time were finishing up the stabilizer soonish, or at least the skeleton of the stabilizer. In a few videos you will see that those hopes did not come to fruition, and it was very frustrating. So come back and witness my frustration. Woo! And that's it for this video. Thanks for watching, guys. Hopefully I have a better process for making these, completing these now, so hopefully you guys will see me again next week.